I'm Julia Borston here at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in Beverly Hills. I'm joined now by the global CEO of Conde Nast, Roger Lynch. Roger, thanks so much for talking to us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So this is your first Vanity Fair Summit. You've been in the role now for 6 months. What's your sense of what it's like to be running a magazine and publishing organization after years of being at Pandora and at Dish before that, now that you've been here for 6 months?
Yes, well, you know, my background, as you said, is much more digital media, not really traditional publishing, but when you look at what the business of Conde Nast is today, it's really about content creation, and magazines are one element. They're actually now a minority of our revenue. And but digital and video is really the areas of our business that are growing the most.
So when you talk about digital, you talk about videos, we have to talk about Facebook. And today we are talking a lot about Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg testifying on Capitol Hill. How do you see Facebook as both a competitor for your ad dollars, but also as a partner to try to get the word out there about your content and your brands?
Yeah, you know, Facebook's certainly a competitor for us, and through their ownership of Instagram. And a partner, as you pointed out, and really between Facebook and Google, the majority of all digital ad spend is going to them, and almost all of the growth in digital ad spend is going to them. So very, very formidable competitors, and for me, I see part of my job is figuring out with these big tech platforms, how do we carve out a business relationship that really helps support our business rather than just transfer dollars away from our advertisers coming to us to them.
So when you think about Instagram, and I was talking about this with Vanity Fair editor Radhika Jones, there's this sense that people are spending time on Instagram that they used to spend flipping through a magazine. Do you see the time spent as being an issue in terms of you're competing for the way people are spending their time, not just for ad dollars, and how do you make your products a better rival to what Facebook and Instagram are doing?
You know, this was one of the things I really wanted to understand before I joined Conde Nast, which was what was happening globally with our brands and engagement, whether it's on print or in social media or digitally or in video. And as I really got through all of the data, what I realized is engagement with these brands is growing dramatically. Print has headwinds, but the headwinds on print are really around advertising. If you look at readership of print for all of our titles across the globe, they're down 1% year over year. Our circulation is down 1%. I'd rather it be up, but it's not down that much. So people are still reading magazines at a high level. What they're doing, in addition, is engaging with our brands across all these other new platforms. And one of the fastest growing platforms for us is video, whether it's on our websites or on YouTube, where Conde Nast is actually the largest premium publisher on YouTube.
And so explain to me how you've been able to profit from putting your videos on YouTube and charging higher rates than you would get if you were just a regular publisher on YouTube.
Sure, you know, I think what we're seeing is brands, especially as it relates to YouTube, but really on any platform, they want to make sure that their content, especially the types of brand advertisers that we attract, is associated with very high quality content, non-controversial content, and ideally endemic content. So if you're a fashion advertiser, you want to be by something, you know, from Vogue. And so we're able to do that. We're able to bring advertisers onto YouTube who may not otherwise advertise on YouTube, but they will advertise with us on YouTube.
And you're able to charge higher prices.
We do, yes.
Yeah. So a question back to this idea of Facebook and Google dominating digital advertising, the fact that you are competing with them for ad dollars. You know, we have the attorneys general looking into whether or not Facebook is abusing its market power. You have these questions of sort of antitrust. From your perspective, do you think that these companies are too big and are unfairly using their market power when they're competing with you and your brands for ad dollars?
I think there are real issues. I think there are real issues that that need to be looked at given the dominance of these companies and the impact, and maybe unintended impact, it has on other industries.
What are those issues?
Well, like the fact that if you look at from a publishing standpoint or a content standpoint, when you have two companies that are taking 90% of the growth in digital advertising and other companies are, you know, doing 100% of the content creation and production, there's a little bit that's out of balance there.
So what would you advocate for? I mean, there's talk about, you know, we have presidential candidates saying these companies should be broken up. What do you think is the solution?
I don't go as far as to say that. What I am glad is that they are looking into some of these issues. And I'm also glad, frankly, that some of the platforms are taking some of the issues seriously. I think, you know, Facebook developing a news tab, I mean, we still need to see what exactly that means, but I think that's a step in the right direction where, you know, I think consumers, especially what we went through in this last election, consumers are really looking more and more for trusted brands. And if you think about how technology is changing, like deep fakes, you can't even believe what you watch in video anymore. I think that's driving consumers back to what are the brands I can really trust. And so for these platforms, I think they have to lean into how do we make sure that we're promoting brands that really do engender trust from consumers.
So Facebook's going to be having an event on Friday in which they unveil Facebook, the news tab that they've been talking about. Are you going to be participating at launch?
We're in discussions with them about how it would work. And
do you feel like up until now you've been dissatisfied with how you've been compensated with the distribution of your content on Facebook?
I certainly think there's opportunity to improve that, yes.
With Facebook having these talks with you and working on this news tab, do you feel like they're taking sufficient efforts internally to address your concerns, or do you think it's going to be an issue that will have to be regulated?
I think there is a role for regulators in this.
Interesting. And any prediction of where this goes from here, from a regulatory standpoint?
It's impossible to predict because the issues are so complex that my main concern is that we have regulators who actually understand the issues. Because clearly that's a significant risk, especially if it gets into legislation. That is a real risk that legislators have unintended consequences in what they end up creating.
There's also the question of Apple News, and at one point last year, I think before you joined the company, there was this rumor that Apple News might want to buy Conde Nast. What's your relationship like with Apple News, and could we ever see a deal there? You have a history of selling companies.
Well, no, we have a relationship. We're on Apple News today. I think it's too early to really tell. They're in the process of really iterating and refining that product, and so we were a launch partner with them and remain a launch partner with them, and I hope that it really does drive the results that they're looking for, because that would benefit us.
And before that, there were those reports that Apple might want to buy Conde Nast. Would Conde Nast be interested in selling?
Look, Conde Nast has been owned by the Newhouse family for a very long time, and I expect it to continue to be.
I have to ask you about all of these streaming services because of your experience at Dish. We're on the eve of the launch of, or almost on the eve of the launch of Apple TV Plus, and then Disney Plus and HBO Max. From where you're sitting now, how do you think this streaming battle is going to shake out?
When I launched Sling TV at Dish, it was really about one thing. The pay TV bundles had become so big and so expensive that consumers were opting out, especially younger consumers. And what we saw is the growth of Netflix was at least correlated with, maybe not causation, but correlation with people buying digital antennas to watch local news and sports. And so we created Sling TV to fit like a puzzle piece in between those two. And now and obviously Netflix has continued to grow. We have all these other SVOD services that have come out. And so you have this sort of disaggregation of the bundle that's happening. I think that's going to continue for a little while. And then I imagine what we see is a reaggregation, because it will become too expensive for all these services to try to attract customers all on their own. And you'll start to see little bundles start to form back together, and co-marketing agreements and things like that.
And do you think all of these companies that are currently in this business, Apple, Amazon, the list is very long, do you think some of them will drop out?
The big tech platforms have an incredible advantage with their ecosystems in promoting it. Now that they're getting into the original content, it really is going to be driven by, do they have really the creative, can they capture the creative zeitgeist that will be consistent with their brand and really capture consumers? Disney does that in spades. So I have high expectation that what they do is going to be quite successful, because it is the core of their DNA. It's not the DNA of some of the tech platforms. So they'll need to balance the ecosystem advantages they have with the creative vibe that they really need to generate.
And just a final question on the future of your business.
Yeah.
You come from these two worlds of music, of the TV business and distribution. Here you are in publishing. What does the publishing industry look like in 5 years? How much of your revenue will be about live events like this one and video shows you're putting on YouTube, and how much of it will be about revenue actually generated from the publications and the articles they're publishing?
The way I think about that is, our business historically it was a publishing business, but really today we are a content creation business that has many outlets. Magazines are one of them, digital is another. The video is the fastest growing part of our business, but also, as you mentioned, events. And the thing that we do see is that consumers want to engage with these brands more and more. So that was one of the things that really attracted me to this. Is these brands are really iconic brands. We have brands like the New Yorker or Vogue or GQ or Vanity Fair, Wired. These are brands that consumers want to engage with. And so it's a really interesting strategic problem just to figure out what's the best way to build our business around that consumer engagement. And so I don't think of ourselves as a publishing company. I think of ourselves as a content creation company that engages with consumers, and therefore we have lots of opportunities to figure out monetization around that.
We've recently just seen a spate of consolidation. We saw New York Magazine, sell to Vox. We have Vice buying Refinery 29, and there's been a lot of, and then there was also a Group 9 deal. So there's this question and concern that maybe the valuations of these digital media companies did not really hold up. These are all stock deals. What is that consolidation and the concerns that points to say about your business and your challenges?
Look, those companies have been very entrepreneurial and they've built really interesting businesses, but frankly, they just don't have the brands or legacy that we have. And to me, that's something that is almost impossible today to build, brands like we have. And so I think for them, the headwinds that are, like we talked earlier about what's happening in digital advertising and the dominance of the platforms affect those businesses. They have good consumer engagement. It's hard to monetize that engagement. Especially if you don't have brands that people are willing to pay for content. So I think there's some things you can read about the headwinds in digital advertising, but really I think the big distinction is just the quality of the brands.
Great. Roger Lynch, Global CEO of Conde Nast, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Julie.
I'm Julie Borson here at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit.